It's about time. Time for the final installment of my complete service and revival of this 1949 Vulcain Cricket alarm watch. Welcome, friends. I'm Mike, and I'm an amateur watchmaker in the United States. In this video, I'll be breathing new life into this historic timepiece. If you're just starting out in watchmaking, I'll be explaining the parts and my watch repair methodology so you can easily follow along and understand the steps and concepts as you develop your own watchmaking skills. If you're an experienced watchmaker, I'll be highlighting the intricacies of the alarm complication to give everyone a better idea of what's going on inside this historic timepiece. In the first video, we looked at how this watch operates and how it makes it sound. Then the watch was completely disassembled and cleaned in my new vintage Elmo watch cleaning machine. Today, we will take a closer look at some of the parts that needed further intervention after cleaning, reassemble and test the movement, and refinish the case and face so you'd never guess that this watch is 76 years old. I'll put links to the previous related videos in the description. If you're new to my channel or a returning viewer, please consider subscribing if you enjoy my content. Thanks, it really means a lot. We left off in the first video having removed, cleaned, and oiled the balance and balance capsule on the main plate. Let's get started by reinstalling the balance assembly and running some tests so we can optimize the watch's performance. All right, we're going to put the screws in and then we're going to do a couple of tests. Now it looks to me like that stud is riding just a little bit high. Yes, we need to lower that stud just a little bit to put that hairspring more in flat. The hairspring stud is held in place with this extra long set screw. And that actually looks pretty close. Make sure it's still bouncing. We're going to turn it over, then we're going to turn it back, and good, it's still bouncing. Next test, we want to let it come to a stop. See if I can sight down right between those guide pins and freeze frame. We want the impulse jewel on the balance to be exactly between the two guide pins, and these look pretty good. This Y-shaped flat metal piece is a clamp that holds the balance regulator in position so the timekeeping doesn't get vibrated out of whack when the alarm goes off. Once the movement is back together, I'll regulate the timekeeping and refasten the clamp. Two mainsprings. The main mainspring, this is a right-hand wind. Alarm mainspring, left-hand wind. So I've picked out the appropriate winders from my Vulcain winder set. Right-handed number 7, left-handed number 5. Let's put these together. This Vulcain mainspring winder tool has an arbor with a hook that grabs the cutout at the end of the spring. Then we slide on the winder body, which contains the wound spring like a temporary barrel, sized to fit inside the mainspring barrel. I'll attach the handle, which gives me a better grip while I wind the spring into the tool. You have to go in. Once I make sure that the tail of the spring is guided into the winder, I'll turn the arbor in the opposite direction to release the spring pressure and hold the spring in place with my tweezers. If you release pressure during this stage, there's a chance the spring will go flying out of the tool. All right. The wound spring is now injected into the barrel. I'm inserting the arbor with the arbor hook engaged in the hole on the spring that you saw earlier. Throughout the assembly, you'll see me using a combination of light and medium watchmaking oils and a heavier blue watchmaking grease to keep things lubricated as I reassemble the watch. Once the oil gets wicked into the spring, I'll close the barrel using this plastic widget that applies even pressure to snap on the lid. Sometimes it's easier to get the arbor of the mainspring winder started by flipping over the spring and pressing down, as opposed to inserting it from below. With the spring hooked onto the arbor, we can wind it into the tool. The folded hook on these springs sometimes misbehaves and doesn't want to go into the winder. If the winder barrel is slightly smaller than the watch barrel, you can often sneak the tail in first, and when you dispense the spring, everything will line up. The alarm barrel is closed just like the timekeeping spring barrel, and a little oil is placed where the arbor touches the lid. As we saw in the first video, moisture got into this watch, especially around the crown. Here I'm using my brass tweezers to remove loose rust from the crown wheel yoke. But on closer examination, I found another problem.
See that little burr down there? A smoothing broach.
A smoothing broach is a tapered rod made of hardened metal that can be used to smooth rough areas. I don't want to change the size of the hole, just knock down that little tab of metal that's sticking out.
Oh no, it got my finger caught. The next issue is the finish. So I'm going to throw it on a polishing stick here.
I really like these disposable polishing sticks for cleaning up rusty parts. You can use them wet or dry, and they're available in sets of many different grits.
And nicely that's cleaning up.
Wet sanding is great when you're trying to remove material because the debris gets floated away and doesn't clog the abrasive. For liquid, I'm using window cleaner.
Throw that in my isopropyl alcohol.
The alcohol dries quickly and doesn't leave behind any residue. Hey, that came out great!
I want to put the two mainspring barrels in place and temporarily put on the barrel bridge. It's possible that those holes got worn, so I want to make sure that these holes are not oval. There's just a little bit of shake there, which will allow movement.
If the holes are too big, you can close them slightly by hammering them on a watchmaker's staking set. If the hole is too large to close or has a distorted shape, you can drill it out and insert a jeweled bearing to fill in the space. I'm lubricating and inserting the setting lever screw before putting on the barrel bridge. This is one of the most common components to forget about since it really doesn't have anything to do with the barrel side of the watch. I can think of at least half a dozen times I've had to back up because I've forgotten it. Before putting on the bridge, I'll lubricate the holes that receive the alarm hammer. I'll put some medium weight oil on the center or second wheel, which is also held in place by the barrel bridge. Now, when everything is in place, we can attach the bridge, which is held in place by 3 screws. Anytime multiple screws hold down a part, I like to tighten each screw a little at a time. When the screws are mostly tightened down, I'll do one more pass so they're tightened evenly. Let's make sure everything's turning correctly and lubricate the parts where metal slides against metal. It's easy to put on too much oil, so throughout this assembly you'll see me soaking up the excess with my green Rodico putty.
We'll work in the oil.
The gear train, or power train, transfers the power in the mainspring eventually to the balance wheel. This spring gets screwed to the main plate and applies slight pressure to the pinion that the second hand will attach to help the hand turn more smoothly. I'm putting some lightweight oil on the shoulder of the spring and the shaft of the second hand pinion. The third and fourth wheel are placed onto the main plate, carefully ensuring that their pivots go into the jeweled pivot holes. The train wheel bridge is then carefully placed on the watch, taking care to align the delicate pivots in their respective jewel holes. This can be a very fiddly process, and if you tighten down the bridge without being properly aligned, you can easily snap off a pivot. So take your time and double and triple check your wheels before tightening down the bridge. The escape wheel has its own bridge, which I pre-lubricated in the first video. I feel like the pivots on this watch are extra long, maybe because the movement is thicker to accommodate the alarm complication.
Nope, we're not in. See that?
With the longer pivots, the wheels tend to want to lean over. Again, double check and triple check your work before tightening anything down. When all of the wheels mesh and spin freely, I'll do my final tighten on the bridge.
I was reviewing the videotape and I saw what looked like a bushing that I didn't remove. I wonder if this comes off. Looks like it does come off. It almost looks like this is flared, kind of riveted on, which is just unusual to me because usually these things come off. But okay.
The click is a small spring-loaded component that will keep the mainspring and alarm spring barrels still while the springs are wound. There's lots of different designs for clicks and click springs in watches. Since this watch has 2 spring barrels, it also has 2 clicks. I'm applying my thick watchmaking grease to any surface where metal will slide against metal to preserve the life of the watch.
That's not quite feeling right. Here's what I think is going on. This screw has a collar. This screw, basically the same dimensions, does not have a collar. I think the one with the collar goes on the alarm click, and the one without a collar goes on the timekeeping click. Oh yeah, that's much better, much less wobbly. The other one, the other screw, that extra space was wobbling so much that the end of that spring was coming out. It was slipping behind the click. Come in here with our Rodico on a stick. Oh yeah, that's cleaning up very nicely. Let's do the same thing for the alarm click. Since these parts don't have a big range of motion, I'm going to get that grease on there in 4 points because I don't think it's going to rotate more than 1/4 of a turn, so that'll just help it spread out more evenly.
This is the ratchet wheel for the timekeeping mainspring. There's a buildup of rust in between a couple of the teeth and on the top surface. I'm going to carefully scrape the loose rust off with a small screwdriver. I'm using brass tweezers to remove more of the surface debris. Because brass is softer than steel, it's much less likely to scratch the part as I'm rubbing off the rust. It's still not clean between a couple of the teeth, so I'll hold the part upright in this sizing vise and give it another pass with the screwdriver and the tip of my finest brass tweezers.
There we go. We just dislodged a nice size piece. And you see all that stuff fuzzing off? Yeah, that would get into the watch.
I'll clean up with Rodico and then rinse the part in isopropyl alcohol to ensure that none of the grit is left behind, which can get into the watch and really cause a problem down the road. Here's a quick backstory. The Vulcain Cricket was released in 1947 and was the first commercially successful mechanical alarm wristwatch. Up to that year, the challenge in making an alarm wristwatch was mostly focused on creating an alarm that was robust enough to be felt and heard on the wrist, without diminishing the timekeeping capabilities. Vulcain solved this problem by creating a movement with a second mainspring that's dedicated to sounding the alarm, and a metal diaphragm and resonating caseback that would amplify the sound. The name cricket is a nod to how that small insect is capable of using vibrations to generate such a loud sound.
And that one is ratcheting correctly. Okay, that's firmed. I neglected to lubricate that pivot. That's the nice thing about videotaping, is you can go back and check your performance. That's just a little touch more than I think it needs.
Right about now, I remember thinking how well this project was coming together, and I was anxious to install the pallet fork so I could reinstall the balance and see how well the cleaned up watch was running. But things didn't go as planned.
Yep, snap the pivot off.
It took me several weeks and $80 to find a replacement fork. When the part arrived, I compared it with the original to make sure it was correct, but I noticed that the shellac that held the pallet jewels on the new pallet fork was failing. I don't have a lot of experience working with shellac, but I managed to get the pallet stones on the new fork secured. I'll put a link to my pallet fork shellac repair video down below if you'd like to watch. I cleaned the new fork in 1-dip solvent and gave it a bath in Epilam, a liquid that will dry to a film that helps keep the lubrication just on the tips of the pallet stones where it contacts the escape wheel. I blotted the Epilam off the pivots before it dried by poking them into a piece of pithwood. You'd better believe that I was really careful this time around, double and triple checking that my pivots were in the jewels before tightening the bridge. Are we good?
It looks like we are.
With a slight wind in the mainspring, the pallet fork should snap back and forth between those two banking pins, and it does. Everything is looking good, so I'm going to put more of a wind in the mainspring and then reinstall the balance to see if this watch will run after service.
There we go.
This is probably my favorite part of a watch service, when the balance wheel springs back to life after a complete disassembly. I'll check to make sure the balance bridges securely on its posts and reinstall the mounting screws. As the balance bridge settles into place, the wheel is oscillating even stronger. I'm looking forward to seeing how well it's running on the timegrapher, but first we need to take the balance assembly off one more time so we can lubricate the pallet fork pivots and pallet stones where they touch the escape wheel. First, I'll lubricate the pivots with my lightweight oil.
We're going to apply our 9415 grease to the escape wheel instead of to the pallet stone.
The goal in lubricating the pallet stones is to apply the smallest amount of this specialized grease and then manually advance the escapement a few times before reapplying the grease so it gets evenly distributed. After lubrication and a dozen or so revolutions of the escape wheel, we can reinstall the balance and really let the lubricants spread out. I'm putting a full wind in the mainspring, and I will let the watch run overnight. This is how the watch was running when I bought it.
So it's running slow, low amplitude, high beat error. At least the lines are pretty straight.
Here's the watch after service, running in dial down position. I'll put the before results on the screen, also in dial down position. We've added over 100 degrees of amplitude power by servicing the watch. The rate says we're losing a minute per day, so let's adjust that. To change the rate, I loosen the clamp that holds the regulator in place and move the regulator arm so the pointer is closer to the plus or faster setting. I can't get the regulator to move, so I'm placing the movement on my bench for better leverage. All it needs is a small nudge.
Let's see how we did.
Wow, talk about a lucky nudge! First try and the timegrapher says the watch is keeping almost perfect time as depicted by the flat lines. I know the beat error is higher than desirable, but I think I'm going to leave it alone, at least for now. The watch is running strong and keeping excellent time. So I will retighten the regulator clamp and we can move on to rebuilding the dial side of the watch. One of the cool features about this Vulcain Cricket caliber 120 movement is that you can wind both the timekeeping and alarm mainsprings with an easy back and forth winding of the crown when it's fully pushed in. This is made possible by a crown wheel yoke that wigs and wags back and forth, alternately engaging the two ratchet wheels. I don't have instructions for servicing this movement, so I'm going by intuition to figure out where to put the lubricant. It helps to dry assemble the parts and make a mental note of where things are sliding and turning. Once you understand where parts rub, you can apply the lubricant of your choice. I'm using grease on these parts because they are slow-moving, high-torque areas, and the stickiness of the grease should stay in place for a long time to come.
And the screw for the wag side of this assembly is a collared screw with a slightly thicker head.
I'll start reassembling the alarm complication by installing the alarm stop lever and stop lever spring, and then I will pre-lubricate for the other alarm components. One of the great things about the Vulcain Cricket is the simplicity of operation. Described in the June 1949 issue of Jeweler's Circular Keystone Newsletter, all of the functions of the mechanism are controlled by a winding crown and pusher referred to in the instruction booklet as the button. These operate jointly through the use of a jumper spring and can each be placed in 3 different positions. The button, when pushed in, causes the crown to go to the 3rd or fully out position, allowing you to set the alarm. Pressing the crown in pushes the button out and leaves the watch in winding position. Pulling the crown out directly puts you in setting mode. Because of this dual-use setup, the time can only be set forward and the alarm can only be set backward. With the alarm lever yoke, and star wheel in position, we can more clearly see how they contact each other and lubricate accordingly.
Let's see if we can line this all up.
This robust cover plate keeps everything in place and is secured by 2 screws. The cannon pinion and setting wheels on the Cricket are similar to what you'd expect to see on a conventional wristwatch.
And with my sturdy tweezers,
The cannon pinion snaps into place.
there we go. Right there and there. So now our minute wheel goes on, and that will mesh with our cannon pinion. Here is our intermediate wheel. Okay, that drops onto its post, and that meshes nicely right there. Here is our minute wheel cover.
We'll start assembly of the keyless works by attaching the setting lever with the screw we installed earlier under the barrel bridge. And if you pardon my finger, holding the lever in place with my finger, I'll set the screw from the other side of the movement. Feels like it's catching. Screw engaged. Time to apply grease to the clutch wheel and drop it into the movement. Let's put the winding pinion in place and thread through the center of those parts with the winding stem, which I'll lubricate a bit later. No, I put it in backwards. Whoops! I meant to put the clutch wheel in with the flat teeth facing the winding wheel. The shape of these teeth is called castellated, and it's different than the angled or ratcheted clutch wheel and winding pinion teeth that you're probably familiar with on a conventional movement. Now I'll tighten the setting lever screw, which will lock the stem and crown in place. Doink, there we go. A little dab of grease goes on and around the post for the yoke, or as Vulcain calls it, the clutch lever. When in place, this will ride in the groove on the sliding clutch. The clutch lever spring, aka yoke spring, will be carefully held in place as I tension the end against the lever. I'm holding my breath with anticipation as I apply my blue grease to the friction points. Don't bump your screen or that spring will go flying. Once we get this clutch lever fastened down, we can all take a deep breath of relief. Okay, it's time to spread out the oil and remove what we don't need and add a little bit where we do but don't have it. We'll continue with these alarm and time setting components, starting with the push piece with spring. It sits over that bushing we saw earlier that was trapped on its post. The push piece is a rocking cam that the alarm button presses against, and it interacts with the setting lever below and the alarm lever above it, switching the watch between time setting and alarm setting modes. So let's look at all the points of contact. Like before, I'll move the parts to get an idea of where they touch and their range of motion, and apply some blue Mobius 9501 grease as appropriate. I'll put some grease where the intermediate setting wheels will go. Folks, I did not see this coming. These teeth should drop in and synchronize. I snagged my tray with my pinky and parts transported themselves to another dimension. That was really bad. All right, I'm going to stop camera. Man, I don't know what the hell that was, and I hope I got all the parts. Long story short, I did, but I think it was only possible because I keep a flashlight within reach anytime I'm doing watchmaking. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled program. I must be careful. All right. After confirming that the crown wheel is engaging the sliding clutch, I'm putting this floating minute setting wheel into place, where it will ride on a post on the bottom of this setting wheel yoke. Now the spring end of the push piece with spring is placed into this slot, which will rock the yoke, snapping the setting wheel into position for either time setting or alarm setting. Let's lubricate the cannon pinion and remaining posts so we can finish up this side of the watch. Let's install the hour wheel next. Notice how it rides up and down because it's sitting on the alarm stop lever. You'll see that action again in a little while. The alarm setting connection wheel and alarm setting wheel and pinion are now dropped onto their posts, making sure that they mesh. Finally, the unlocking wheel is dropped over the hour wheel. This is the component the alarm hand attaches to. This complex-looking part is humbly called the setting lever spring, but it serves multiple purposes as you'll see in a moment.
Oh, that was a lucky drop.
It acts as a cover plate for all the wheels that we just installed. I'll fasten it loosely for now with these 2 screws. It also has a 3-position return spring for the alarm push piece, and, like its name implies, it provides the spring-loaded detents for the 3 setting lever positions. With the spring still loose, I'll apply some grease and coax the cams onto their posts. And when I've assured that everything is in place, I'll tighten it down. This part is unimaginatively named the 3-arms spring. But how many of you think it looks like an adorable tropical fish?
Blub, blub, blub. Bye-bye.
The 3-arms spring is placed over the unlocking wheel with its curved arms pointing down. It gets attached with 3 of the tiniest screws in the entire movement. These screws were the first thing I thought of when I knocked over my tray. If they had gone flying, this project would have ground to a halt again. These screws are so small, I don't think I would have ever found them, no matter how fresh the batteries in my flashlight were.
Come on. Where'd it go? Come here.
Between you and me, I think static electricity actually held them in place in the plastic tray.
You want to be there.
Well, that's a theory I hope I don't have to re-examine any time in the near future or ever.
Oh, you know what? I've got a divot out of the point of that screwdriver. Oh, and I just took a chip out of the screwdriver.
Oh boy, watchmaking sure isn't boring. Let's take a break and do an emergency screwdriver repair.
I don't think that screwdriver tip's supposed to be like that. I'm going to use my little screwdriver sharpening jig here.
Once you set your angle and check the blade for flatness, the sharpening jig can be flipped over so both sides of the screwdriver tip can be sharpened symmetrically. I'm using a rigid diamond plate that's 400 grit on one side and 600 on the other. I'll clean the tip with some Rodico as I go. Now I will add a flat to the tip of the blade. Make sure you keep the screwdriver at 90 degrees to your sharpening surface and keep your pressure light. Here's the results on the other screwdriver. So much better. Now we can go back and more firmly fasten the screws on the 3-arm spring.
Let's check our positions. Let's go back into setting position. You could see the minute and the hour wheel turning. Our winding position is working. There we go. So that pushes out the crown. And now you can see that we're setting the alarm hand. There we go.
Now that the engine is running smoothly, let's see if we can do some body work. Here's a look at the case, the bezel, the vibrating diaphragm/dust cap, and the stainless steel watch back. I'll hand clean each part before power polishing on my hobby bench grinder. With the sound holes in the back, you can really see the years of grime and debris that the watch has been exposed to. I'll be replacing the crystal with a new one. I would have tried restoring it with sanding and polywatch, but there's a crack that definitely would not buff out. I thought I'd take a look at the crown under the microscope to see if there's a replaceable gasket. Is that a gasket? No. Well, maybe, but not an intentional gasket. I'll get out what I can and send it to the lab for DNA testing. I'm hand cleaning all of the parts using traditional techniques handed down by Swiss horologists from the 17th century. I'm using a plastic container and an old toothbrush, a softwood dowel, and Dawn dishwashing detergent in warm water. I really wanted to clean inside the crown tube, and this airbrush cleaning brush worked perfectly. Can we get it into the lug holes? All of the case parts will be shined on my small buffer, which needed a little manscaping before getting started. I'll be using 2 soft buffing compounds on the rolled gold plating and more aggressive polish on the stainless steel. When I'm working on the buffer, I try to visualize each surface as a separate face or plane, and I count my strokes so each area gets the same number of passes to keep things symmetrical. This is probably more important to do if you're grinding and not buffing, but I do find it rather zen, and I suppose it keeps me from over-polishing one area. And this bezel is such an important piece. If we get this looking good, it's really going to set off how nice that dial looks. Get a new crystal in here, and I think it's going to be fantastic. Okay, let's see if we can clean up the body of the watch. I'm moving to my green compound, which is for shining harder metals like stainless steel. Every time I change compounds, I also change my buffing mop, keeping each wheel with its respective polishing compound so I don't cross-contaminate anything. I don't know if that's base metal or if this whole plate is stainless and that's just dirt or corrosion, but I'm just very lightly going to see if I could touch it up on this wheel. All right, let's get this watch back together. Oh, but first we need to put this in the ultrasonic and get it clean. We've got rafts. Special sauce. To the rinse. To the warm air dryer. And back to the bench for final assembly. Let's put the winding stem in this pin vise. I'm going to use a little bit of semi-chrome polish, see if I can get an even better shine on this crown. Instant shine. It's so shiny it's hard to focus on. The hands on the watch are in pretty good shape, at least to the naked eye. There's no paint or luminous material on the timekeeping hands, so they might just need a basic cleanup and light buffing. When cleaning hands, you should be very careful not to be too aggressive or you can easily bend or break the hand. I'm using isopropyl alcohol and a soft foam brush, being careful to go along the length of the hand from the center to the outside. It's very easy to snag the point of a hand on your cleaning swab, so always take your time and clean or buff in the direction the hands are pointing. Let's take a closer look at the alarm hand. Once I find the appropriate hole on my staking block, I'll put it under the microscope because this hand needs some love. You can see some rust spots or pitting along the length of the hand, and the arrow at the tip looks like it had a prior paint repair, which is now coming off. My first cleaning pass is just isopropyl alcohol. Here I'm trying to flake the paint off the arrow with my brass tweezers. I think we're going to need some type of solvent to dissolve it. I'll start with a dab of naphtha, which basically does nothing.
Let's try a little bit of acetone.
Acetone, which is commonly sold as nail polish remover, is great at dissolving paint or removing adhesives like CA superglue. If you're shopping for some, make sure you purchase pure acetone and not a nail polish remover that says it's acetone-free or an acetone blend.
That's pretty good.
With the paint out of the way, let's see if we can get rid of the rust. I thought I'd try one of these abrasive silicone polishing sticks, which is intended for cleaning the pivots on wheels. There's a little pin vise that comes with it.
Green, extra fine, red fine, black, medium. I think I'll start with black. Let's just do a few light strokes here and see what happens. Just do it along this part. That seems to be removing those rust spots pretty well. It also is kind of scratching it looks like. Let's jump to the red and then jump to the green, because I don't want to scratch it up. Now, granted, we're looking at it under the microscope. Let's see if this can smooth it a little bit. Well, we got the rust off, but it was just a little bit aggressive. So I think I might just try a little bit of chrome polish on a finger cut. Take a little bit of semi-chrome. How did we do?
Ah, that's much better. There's only one thing left, and that's replacing the paint on the tip of the hand. I'm using black Tester's model paint, which is a solvent-based enamel.
So we let this set up overnight. Let's get this alarm hand put safely away. This is a 29.2 millimeter crystal, and this is a low dome crystal. Here's how I hope this is going to work. So I'm going to place the bezel here. Crystal gets placed here. Let's see if we can slightly compress the diameter of that crystal. Very light pressure. Now let's see if we can lift the bezel up onto the crystal. There we go. Did you hear that? Our bezel is ready for reassembly.
The movement is held in the case with 2 screws and 2 custom-shaped clamps. If you saw the first video when we did the disassembly, you may remember that one of the screws and clamps was missing. I've been searching for a replacement unsuccessfully, but since one is better than none, I think this one deserves a cleanup. If any of you know where I can source a set of mounting screws and clamps for the Vulcain Caliber 120 movement, then please let me know in the comments or send me an email via the link on my YouTube homepage.
It's a cool dial, and there's definitely some age on it, and I want to be very gentle with this dial.
I've had some very positive results cleaning dials. I have positively messed them up in a variety of ways. So I'm going to be very gentle with my Rodico and work under the microscope so I can see the difference between fibers and surface dirt and flaws in the lacquer, which I don't want to make worse.
Get a little bit of gloss on these numerals and indices. I love these fonts. Look at the 4 and the 5. It's pretty awesome.
With the loose debris gone and a little more of a shine on the numerals and gold dots, I think this dial is ready to go back in the movement. Let's put a wind in the timekeeping mainspring and reinstall the balance. Even though we saw it running earlier, it's always a relief when the balance springs back to life each time you install it. I will turn the cams that secure the dial feet to the open position. Carefully seat the dial posts, aka dial feet, into their holes. Then the dial is locked in place by turning both cams counterclockwise. Before putting the movement in the case, you need to put the watch into alarm setting mode by pressing the lever that the button pusher slides into. Now the movement can be angled into the case, carefully aligning the end of the button into its cutout.
There we go.
I'll secure the movement with the one case clamp and screw that's farthest from the winding stem and button. Leaving a screw a little loose will give you the wiggle room you need to more easily align the winding stem when it's time to insert it. I like to put fresh gaskets in the crown when I service a watch. I found one that appeared to be the right diameter, lubricated it with silicone paste, and dropped it into place. Then I used my blue grease to lubricate all of the friction points on the winding stem. I secured the stem by tightening the setting lever screw, and then secured the movement in place by tightening the case screw. But I couldn't get the watch to stay in setting position.
So I think that gasket is preventing this from settling down enough.
The gasket I put in the crown was too fat. I don't know if this watch originally had a gasket, so I came to terms with the idea that this would never be a dive watch, and I removed the one I installed. That did the trick, and the watch now easily goes into both winding and setting positions without protest. Let's install our hands, starting with the alarm hand. I located the exact point the alarm goes off and set the alarm hand at 12 o'clock. I used my big hand setting tool to get the hand started.
What I'm trying to do here is check my clearance. I want to make sure I'm not hitting the indices or the dial.
Then I made smaller adjustments with my little hand pressing tool. The hour hand is pressed into place, exactly aligned at 12 o'clock with the alarm hand.
Let's put a little bit more wind in the alarm spring.
Now the minute hand goes into place. But we have a small snag. Literally, the curved minute hand is getting hung up on the alarm hand. I thought that perhaps I had bent the minute hand when I cleaned it, and was determined to straighten it out just a little so it wouldn't hit the hand below it. I tried flattening it in this brass parallel vise. Then I tried gently bending it without any luck. I gave it a squeeze in my Delrin-jawed parallel pliers.
Let's see if that did anything. That's some springy metal right there. So I know that I have a curved second hand as well. I mean, that one's really curved. So maybe we need to work on curving the alarm hand instead of uncurving the other hands. All right, let's take the hands back off.
With the focus of a surgeon, I carefully removed the hands and coaxed the alarm hand into a curve that would clear the raised indices and not interfere with the hands above it. Through sheer concentration, I think I magnetized the hand, which was just the comic relief I needed at this crucial part of the project.
And we'll do 12 o'clock again. Okay, so we have our clearance now. you notice that that hour hand pops up when it hits the alarm?
Now we can drop the second hand into place. Wait, it really dropped. It's not supposed to do that.
It looks like it's squishing. Yeah, it's squishing.
The second hand was too loose on its post. It easily came off, and I pressed the minute hand down again lightly because it looked like it was riding a little high. Then I made the tube on the second hand tighter by squeezing it in this vise that has tiny holes of different sizes.
Let's give it a little squeeze.
Finally, the second hand is secure, and all the hands are riding at a good height and not fighting with each other. After polishing the case back, it became apparent that there was some damage caused by a prior watch enthusiast that must have tried to remove the back by prying up on the sound hole, causing two distinct bumps. Right next to that, there's a gouge in the metal with a burr that's sticking up and sharp enough to catch your finger on. My first thought was to see if I could rub the back with a piece of wood and level the two bumps that were sticking up. That had no effect except for making a little sawdust.
No, that's pretty much nothing. I think I'm going to need to do something a little bit more percussive. And by percussive, I mean hit it.
I marked the two high spots so they would be easier to see, and then whacked them for a while with a flat-faced stake from my staking set. Not bad. Let's turn our attention to that nasty burr. There's actually a curl of metal still attached to the gouge, which I'll push back. Then I'll sand the area, starting with an 800 grit polishing stick, working my way up to 12,000 grit.
Yes, that is smooth. All right, let's go through some grits here.
Each time I go up in grit, I'm feathering into a larger area so I don't make a flat spot.
Let's see, how are we looking? That's perfectly smooth right now. That's kind of interesting. There's a nice little burr right there, isn't there? Okay, I have an idea. I'm going to grab a smoothing broach, and I'm just going to burnish that little burr. Actually, I think that kind of worked. Use a little bit of semichrome polish. If a slab of stainless steel can look sexy, that's what it's going to look like. There's our attempted dent repair, and we got rid of the burr on the inside. And right there was that fingernail catcher, and that's all nice and slippery smooth right now. It's the next day, and the watch is still running, and it's keeping good time. Let's get the crystal and the crystal bezel attached. Make sure I haven't left any evidence behind in the form of fingerprints, dust, dog hair, lint. Now, if you remember, there was a little cutout, little hole. There it is. So that's our alignment indicator.
That mark helps us line up the hammer with the stud on the sound diaphragm, sometimes referred to as the gong. If you set off the alarm, you can really hear when that hammer is hitting that sweet spot. The sound diaphragm snaps into place. Now the stainless steel outer back is pressed into place. Here's the final alarm sound. I'm going to let it ring as long as it goes. If that doesn't wake you up or get you out of a meeting you don't want to be in, then nothing will. Despite hitting several bumps in the road during this project, I couldn't be happier with how this Vulcain Cricket alarm watch came out. I auditioned a few different color leather straps, and I have to tell you that I like them all. Let me know your favorite down below. Friends, as this video draws to a close, I want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate the views and especially your comments, which I look forward to reading, and I encourage you to speak up in the space below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I look forward to your questions. This channel isn't just about me talking, it's about having a conversation about watchmaking and watch repair. I hope you consider subscribing so we can continue that conversation as we all learn and move forward together. Until our next time together, be good, be well, and be safe, and I will see you on the next one.